Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Please join me and my guests on this next interview. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have announced their intention to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention, which bans the use of anti-personnel landmines. Citing heightened security threats from Russia and Belarus, these NATO member states argue that exiting this treaty will enhance their defensive capabilities along the alliance's eastern flank. Now, this move has sparked global debate over the balance between military preparedness and humanitarian concerns. Joining us today on TVP World to delve into the implication of this decision is Louis Wierenga from the International Relations Institute at the Baltic Defence College. As an expert in Baltic security affairs, Wierenga offers valuable insights into the region's strategic dynamics. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So first, can we take a look at this Ottawa Convention, which bans the use of anti-personnel landmines? Can you help us understand how significant it is to try to exit this particular convention?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to understand that it's a political signal to Moscow rather than purely a reflection of the immediate need for military hardware. The convention, of course, prohibits the production, possession, and transfer of anti-personnel mines, and there are countries that have signed the convention, and there are countries that haven't. The United States and Russia have not, and we might even be seeing sort of a spillover effect or a ripple effect, if you will, because the Latvian Prime Minister, to echo her words, she said, "We will not be the first or the last country to leave the convention," and all eyes are on Finland, looking to be that potential country that withdraws from the treaty next, because they've previously stated that they were considering leaving due to the fact that Russia has been using anti-personnel mines in Ukraine. So the treaty is more of a political statement, but it's also a reflection of the current security environment, because the sort of rules-based norms have been tested and challenged since the end of the Second World War. But this is a massive scale, several-year war of aggression waged against Ukraine. And as a result, we have a war on European soil, and the countries in NATO's northeastern flank understand the security situation all too well, being in the proximity of the region and also strong supporters of Ukraine. So we have to combine the political statement and the political significance of this with the actual security environment reality that is now being faced, coupled with the uncertainty of the ongoing peace talks between the U.S. administration and Russia right now, the outcome of which we can only speculate. So what I see this as being part of a wider issue of an acknowledgement that the security environment has changed, and we have to prepare for the worst in all aspects of this.
This kind of reminds me of the cluster munition debate for a while ago, where Ukraine was finally allowed to use these things against Russia, where same as these the Ottawa Convention, we do see U.S., Russia not being a signatory in the first place. Do you think that this is something that we will see further down the line, where a lot of these convention or ban of use of certain equipments and weapons are going to be lifted because, well, Russia's not been kind of adhering to it in the first place?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think that with big states and smaller states right now, the conversation is definitely on the European side of the alliance that there needs to be a lot of, I mean, NATO acts on consensus, of course, but with the current talks, with current political talks, there is sort of maneuvering. If you look at the Nordic Baltic 8, for example, countries that are in the proximity who have increasingly growing concerns over the Russian military threat. But I think it's also important to look at the final part of the statement signed by Poland and the Baltic States. It said, "Despite our withdrawal, we will remain committed to international humanitarian law, including the protection of civilians during armed conflict. Our nations will uphold these principles while addressing our security needs." And I think that that's one of the most important aspects to understand, both the Ottawa Treaty issue and what you just mentioned, is that what makes our countries different is that we are liberal democracies, and we respect the rule of law, and we respect civilians, and that this is all about defensive territory, not aggression, not offense, but being prepared, because the Russian Federation has clearly signaled its intent to be an aggressor. And when it comes to NATO countries, of course, this is done through hybrid means, but they're growing in frequency and they're growing in severity. So the natural response is to address this. So um, that is the most important thing for me in looking at this. Is yes, I think that things will change, and there might be political discussions about the extent to this and what makes us not them, and the difference. But what we've seen is that Russia has no regard for human life, civilian or military, and that they will bomb hospitals and they will do all kinds of awful things. So as a response, you have to be ready for that, and that means a change in the calculus of what countries are prepared to do. But it's also, I think, telling, because um, you know these concerns are very, very real, and you hear a lot this term, the holiday from history, that we need to understand that that's over, and that the world has gone back to great power competition, and certain countries are willing and capable to aggress others.
Right, like you mentioned, this might have a ripple effect going forward, and I also want to touch on what you mentioned earlier, where the rule-based norm is certainly being challenged right now with Russia breaking these conventional norms and, like you said, using whatever means it can to get an advantage on the battlefield. Do you think that these humanitarian concerns still remain realistic, seeing that if Russia or any other aggressors are fighting without these norms, for the rule-based NATO countries to essentially fight them with one hand tied behind their back, might that be an issue going forward?
It might be. I mean, I'd like to bring up another passage from the signed document. It's that the three Bs, the three Baltic states and Poland. The document states that we believe that in the current security environment, it is paramount to provide our defense forces flexibility and freedom of choice to potentially use new weapon systems and solutions to bolster the defense of the alliance's vulnerable eastern flank. So those discussions are going to be had. There'll be military advice, there'll be political decisions, but I do think that that is um, a potential new reality for the security environment, because even if the peace deal stops aggression in Ukraine, I'm not predicting anything here. I'm just using this
All
as
right,
a
of
potential
course.
example. uh, then what next? Is Russia really going to sit down and stop? I mean, a lot will depend on the deal, and it'll also depend on the Russian president, who is not known for keeping his word. So I think that that really changes the calculus, and that everybody now truly understands that February 2022 changed significantly the security architecture in Europe, but also globally, and that will require new thinking, especially in terms of AI and emerging technology, and how that's applied to militaries in terms of bolstering deterrence and bolstering defense.
Right. So, do you think that this ripple effect, like you mentioned, would also have sort of a, let's say, slippery slope effect, in which more and more of these conventions, these treaties being obsolete, and again, because of the aggressor using these extreme norms, that perhaps NATO countries, the West, will have to, again, like I mentioned, change their calculus and how to deal with them?
Potentially. I mean, that's a big political discussion, because in the aftermath of the Second World War, I mean, the Western world decided that we cannot continue um, living in a culture of war, where the destruction is now massive, considering at the time the way that technology had sped up the speed and the volume by which people could be killed on the battlefield, as well as civilians. And I think you mentioned the term slippery slope, yes, because I also mentioned the closing of this document, and how it's, I think, really solidly worded, because that signals that the countries that signed, Poland and the three Baltic states, are willing and are very much going to secure their territory and their people, but that upholding principles is a very key and paramount part of addressing security needs. So it's a fine line to walk, but I think if you compare liberal democracies versus authoritarian regimes, the difference couldn't be further. I mean, that's a stark difference, and I do believe that given the mindset that has developed, and then with those decades during the development of rule of law, norms and values, liberal democracies, coupled with a drastic change in the security environment, um, and how Europe has just come together as this war of aggression continues and as it escalates in support of Ukraine. I think that good decisions are going to be made because there's an understanding that right now is a time to act quicker, and to act more decisively to address what needs to be addressed in terms of the security architecture, while not abandoning our principles and values.
Right. And on the logistical side of things, can you help us understand if this withdrawal from the convention would affect the cohesion and interoperability of NATO allies? Since we do know that NATO pretty much functions within one kind of rule, but with now different countries taking their own directions, is that going to be a little bit of an issue?
Um, I wouldn't say that it would be an issue in terms of a negative. I think it will be an issue in terms of a necessity to discuss. That very well may be something that's discussed at the Hague Summit this upcoming summer. I'm not sure if that'll be, I don't think that that will be on the top of the agenda, but I think that it'll definitely be something that certain nations bring to the table to discuss, because I've mentioned before on this program that it's the Nordic Baltic 8, you have Poland, and now you have different perspectives from France, and also from the new German government that's soon to take form, that these are the issues that need to be prioritized. And you start to see very big political shifts in terms of thinking the further west you go from NATO's northeastern flank. So I would say it would be a topic of conversation, but maybe not an issue. I mean, you never really know what will happen behind closed doors, but I don't think that it's going to be something that is a big bone of contention across the board.
All right. Thank you so much for your input and insight, and help us shed some light on this situation. And thanks for being with us on TVP World. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.